A quick note before we begin. It's my birthday today. And just because I didn't know it was my birthday until someone reminded me last week doesn't mean that you don't have to get me a present. And what do I want? Support me on Patreon. Throw me $1 a month. Join my Discord community, get some benefits. I am gearing up to write a lot of new short stories and poetry, all of which I will publish on my Patreon for $5 and up members. But for just $1, you get access to a Discord and exclusive essays that I write, amongst other things. There's loads of benefits, loads of tiers. Pick your poison, but pick something because it's my birthday today. Even if I forgot. Historical horror fiction holds a special place in my heart for two connected reasons. The first is that these novels are wonderful throwbacks to the gothic classics that inspired horror fiction to begin with. When you read a good historical horror novel, it reminds you of things like Dracula and Frankenstein. And let's be honest, if you cut me open, you wouldn't find a soul, you'd just find a battered copy of Frankenstein. And the other reason is a little bit more interesting. Maybe you'll disagree, but there is something kind of escapist about historical fiction. Much like science fiction and fantasy, historical fiction exists in a world that is not our world, at least not anymore. And while I love horror fiction with all of my blackened and shriveled heart, the horror genre can kind of exhaust you after a while, especially when you're reading horror novels set in our world right now, books that reflect the real world issues that we all face. After a while, those kinds of things can be a bit of a bummer, but historical horror fiction feels a bit more escapist. It's horror that is set in a different time. And so, for today, I have 3 historical horror novels that I just read back to back that I want to recommend to you. But I have a lot more up in my head, so I'll probably make more videos about this in the future. Let's start with the one that I read most recently, as in I finished this book this morning, and the ending is just running around in my head like a hamster on a wheel. This is Blood on Her Tongue by Dutch author Johanna van Veen. Author of one of the best historical gothic novels I have ever read and one of my favourite books of last year, My Darling Dreadful Thing. What a debut this was. And Blood on Her Tongue takes us further back in time and explores a few different themes than what were explored in My Darling Dreadful Thing. But suffice to say, if you enjoyed that book, you're going to enjoy this book. Blood on Her Tongue is primarily set in a country estate in the Netherlands in the 1880s. And as I said, Johanna van Veen is a Dutch author, but this was not translated into English. She wrote this in English, as she did with My Darling Dreadful Thing, which, and I really hope I don't sound patronizing here, is such an incredible skill. For her to write these novels in her second language, and for them to be as strikingly poetic as they are, it really is an incredible feat. She is an enormous talent. Now, My Darling Dreadful Thing was an explicitly queer novel. Queerness was in the blood and the bones of that book. This one still has queer elements, but thematically it is way more about sisterhood. Our protagonist is a young woman named Lucy, who has been beckoned to the home of her twin sister, Sarah. Sarah is married to a wealthy man named Michael, and they live in a great stately home on unsteady ground. There is a bog on their land. A year ago, they lost their child to a fever, and in the time since, a well-preserved body has been found in the bog. And Sarah has become obsessed with this bog woman. In the early chapters, we read letters from Sarah sent to Lucy about excavating and examining this body. While the body of this woman was being excavated, a stone was found lodged in her mouth. And as Sarah felt the urge to pull the stone out, her hand was cut on the teeth of this corpse. Ever since then, Sarah has been going steadily mad, at least according to the letter from Michael to Lucy. And so Lucy dropped everything and off she went to the house to see her sister and find out what's going on. Sarah believes that whatever is happening to her is happening because of this bog woman. But what does that mean exactly? Is it a ghost? Is it a curse? Who was this bog woman? Why did she die and how? These are all mysteries that will be explored and explained, along with so many other details about these people, their relationships, their home, and their history. I said that this is a queer novel, but even to explain how exactly it is queer would be to spoil more than one element of the plot and the character relationships. And my favourite thing about Johanna van Veen's books is how far she is willing to go into borderline absurdity. Gothic fiction is camp. It is often almost ridiculous in how far it goes into taboo strangeness. Look back through the history of Gothic fiction, and all you see, really, is this impossible camp strangeness. It's in The Monk, it's in The Castle of Otranto, it's in Frankenstein and Dracula, and it's in the works of Johanna van Veen. She fully understands just how far you can take the body horror, the terror, the surrealism of the Gothic. And in both of these books, she pulls out all of the stops. She holds nothing back, and to some readers, these books would feel like they were completely unhinged. But as an unhinged Gothic obsessive, these books are everything to me. Blood on Her Tongue is another knockout novel from an incredible talent. Next up, something a little bit different. A novel that also came out this year. A novel that is also historical, it is also horror, and it was also written by a European author in their second language. So there's a lot of overlap here, but still, this is something else. Victorian Psycho is the second novel from Spanish author Virginia Feito, who, according to her author bio in this book, grew up in both Spain and France, studied literature in London, had lots of success with her first novel, Mrs. March, which I haven't read yet, and then she wrote this, a book that is so well titled, because Victorian Psycho really does echo American Psycho. If you've seen the film or read the book, you'll be familiar with the themes that are being explored here. And just like if I was telling you to go watch or read American Psycho for the first time, I am prefacing this by saying here that Victorian Psycho is, for lack of a better word, shocking. There are moments in this book that will leave your jaw on the floor. In fact, I'm gonna tiptoe around something here, but I feel like I need to warn people. If you are someone who is sensitive to the idea of babies having their light snuffed out, don't read this, please. That said, Victorian Psycho is a dark comedy. A very, very dark comedy. And that's why, despite the fact that it shares a lot of interesting similarities with Blood on Her Tongue, it is a wholly different novel. One of the great character archetypes of Gothic fiction is the governess. In fact, I've done a whole video about the role of the governess in Gothic fiction. And our protagonist, Winifred Notty, great name, that's the first time I've said it out loud, is a governess, and she's just arrived at a new job. As the novel begins, Mr. and Mrs. Pounds, such an interesting choice of name. They all are actually interesting names. Anyway, Mr. and Mrs. Pounds have welcomed Miss Notty into their home and put her in charge of their two children. And we learn from Miss Notty's narration right from the beginning that she has a dark past. Not only did she have a difficult childhood of her own, but she has spent her adulthood being unkind to other people, is probably the most polite way to put that. Ironically. She is dangerous, but the Pounds family don't know that yet. And this is a short novel. It's just under 200 pages, and I read it in maybe just over a day. It's a very easy and quick read, but it is shocking and upsetting. It is full of horrific death and gore and blood and grossness. But like American Psycho, it is presented as a shocking, dark comedy. However, I would say that this book is a little bit light on the political satire. American Psycho is very famously a clever and astute work of political satire that pokes fun at the American capitalist system, as well as toxic masculinity and other things besides. Victorian Psycho doesn't quite have that political maturity, but it does deliver the same kind of shock value and entertainment that you get from American Psycho. It's a novel that won't stick with you forever, but you'll have a really, really fun time with it. And so much historical Gothic fiction is dark and brooding, and it's all about victimhood. There is tragedy laced into Gothic horror. Everyone is such a tragic character. Here, yes and no, but mostly no. What's really clever about this book is the fact that Miss Notty is a psychopath, probably, maybe. But she also observes how awful the people around her are as well, and that's really entertaining and interesting. Victorian Psycho won't change the world, but it is a really, really fun time if you can stomach it. You've been warned. And I left this third book till last because I've already done a dedicated video review of it, so if you're interested in even more deep thoughts about this book, go check out that video. This is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, probably my favourite novel of this year so far. Hungerstone is a loose retelling of Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, the first vampire novel, a book that preceded Bram Stoker's Dracula by 25 years. And over the past few years, Carmilla has seen something of a resuscitation. A lot of people are reading it. Pushkin Press put out a new edition, which I've got somewhere behind me. Recently, American author S.T. Gibson put out a dark academia retelling of Carmilla, which I really enjoyed. Although admittedly a lot of people were quite lukewarm on it, but I loved it. And now we have Hungerstone, a novel that I love so much, I would personally consider it my definitive Carmilla. Although saying that does make me feel immediately harsh on the original, but Sheridan Le Fanu's dead. He doesn't know. That man is gonna haunt me now. Oh well, that'll be fun. Hungerstone is, to put it bluntly, a sapphic delight. And I made a mistake in my video review of waiting until the very end of that video to mention the fact that this book has my favourite intimate sex scene of any novel I have ever read. It happens halfway through, and I read the entire thing out to my partner in bed. Oh my god. It is so delicious. Also, there's been a really fun overlap between all three of the books I've talked about. First off, they all came out this year, but secondly, the first two had a lot in common that I already talked about, but this one is, like Blood on Her Tongue, also queer, specifically sapphic, and is also set in the exact same decade, the 1880s. But this one is not set in the Netherlands. Instead, it's set in Sheffield, in England. Our protagonist, Lenore, great gothic name, is the wife of a rich steel magnate. They have just moved to a big house outside Sheffield, and he's got a big steel mill that he runs. One of the key themes of this book, which is a theme that you can see coming a mile away as soon as you say the word Sheffield, is the theme of class divides. Rich versus poor, the privileged versus the vulnerable. So after moving to this big house outside Sheffield, our protagonist and her husband meet Carmilla in a very similar way to how the original Carmilla plays out. A carriage crashes and overturns outside of their home, and they bring Carmilla in to nurse her back to health. In the original, Carmilla was a teenager, as was the protagonist, but in this book, they are both women around the age of 30. And our protagonist, at first, despises Carmilla, but soon develops a kind of love-hate obsession with her. She is seduced by her, not just in a sexual and romantic way, but also Carmilla seeks to help Lenore find liberation, personal liberation, gender liberation, and liberations of other things besides that. There are a lot of twists and turns in this book, especially in relation to our protagonist and her husband, which I will not spoil. But suffice it to say that this is a book that is fully dedicated to the legacy of the Gothic, all of the fantastic themes that are so often explored in the Gothic, as well as themes of class and a heavy emphasis on queer liberation, which has always been a through line in Gothic horror fiction, but has been a kind of undertone, whereas here it is front and center. It smacks you around the head with its queerness, and I am all in for getting a queer concussion from this book. Give me that queer concussion. The fact that right now it's April and we've already had 3 amazing historical Gothic horror novels come our way, all 3 of which at least have some element of queerness to them, but 2 of them are explicitly sapphic. Oh my god. 2025, you are giving me everything I want out of good fiction. Queer, historical, Gothic horror. Everything I love. Keep it up, don't stop. Happy birthday to me. I am thrilled. Subscribe for books.